The Tampa Bay Buccaneers give out some well-deserved extensions. We have an update on free agent kicker Justin Tucker, and Aaron Rodgers once again made some news, and we now know this will be his final year in the NFL. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Friday, June 27th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov, wrapping up another week here in the quiet portion of the offseason. We're going to jump right into it here today because once again, the NFL gave us news over the course of Thursday. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. It was nice to have. We gave ourselves a little bit of an impromptu day off yesterday. I think we both were needing a little bit of a break. It was a slower news day. We got to watch some of the NBA draft. My Wizards just barely missed out on Ace Bailey. But shout out to Trey Johnson out of Texas. It's gonna be good things for Washington eventually. But we do have to talk about some actual football news that's going on today. And we're going to start with the free agent kicker, Justin Tucker. He has been suspended by the NFL for 10 games for violations of the NFL's personal conduct policy. So, this is all stemming from the accusations of sexually inappropriate behavior that has been brought forth by numerous massage therapists during his time with the Baltimore Ravens. Tucker has denied the claims, is currently facing no civil or criminal charges. The Ravens drafted a kicker during this past draft. They ultimately decided they were going to go ahead and cut Tucker. It was a multi-layer situation that was very complex, according to head coach John Harbaugh. I personally wasn't surprised to see that the NFL did rule that they want to go ahead and suspend him for a certain amount of time. I was surprised to see 10 games, particularly in a case that does not actually have any active lawsuits. How do you think that the league ultimately came to that number of 10 games?
Yes, I'm going to break down over here exactly how this all unfolded because one of the, I guess, complaints around the NFL, especially from teams and agents who represent players who have off field issues, is that there really is no consistency whenever it comes to the NFL and their suspensions. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, for example, landed on 11 after the whole back and forth. We've had players with six, we've had players with four, we've had indefinite. It's just all over the map. So it's always difficult to figure out how the NFL really lands on some of these numbers. And in this case with Justin Tucker, and you mentioned it was 16 massage therapists from 8 different Baltimore area spas who accused Tucker of the misconduct. And this is a situation where it happened back in 2012 to 2016, and you had Tucker coming in and saying all of this is not true, denying any wrongdoing. But behind the scenes, throughout this process, this suspension was not a result of a legal situation or a formal hearing happened. Essentially, the NFL, the NFLPA, the union, and Tucker and his people, his agents, and his lawyers all came together and negotiated this deal to land on a 10-game suspension. And since this was a negotiation and all sides agreed to it, there is no appeal. Tucker is officially agreeing to these 10 games to 10-week suspension. And essentially, Tucker, like we said, he's denied all wrongdoing involving his allegations. But despite his denial, he's agreeing to the suspension. And there's a couple of reasons as to why he would agree to it. There are some people in these cases who know a suspension is going to happen regardless. And essentially, this is the best way to speed up the resolution of a case. Maybe he thinks this helps his chances of signing with a new team because now the other 31 teams know the situation, know how long he's going to be out. There is no pay when it comes to this suspension. He is allowed to participate in training camp. He officially gets suspended on cutdown day, and after 10 weeks, he's eligible to be reinstated. And it's possible that his people, his agent, his lawyers believed that the NFL was prepared to seek a longer suspension, maybe a full season. And as a result, they were okay with, going down and settling at 10 games. Now, him accepting a suspension is also hard to square with because he's been very public about denying all wrongdoing. So this is a story that I would imagine now goes away. Again, like you said, there's been nothing civil, nothing criminal. I'm not sure if anything is going to unfold when it comes to that. But Tucker is now, from the NFL standpoint, he is basically in the clear and knows what is coming down to bear of a 10-game suspension, as does the rest of the league. The big question everyone is going to ask, and I'm sure this was going to be your next question, Ben, is does he have a future in the NFL and what's going to happen here? I would be shocked if any NFL team signs him during the suspension. But if you look around the NFL, there are a number of teams every single year who have their kicker who all of a sudden has the hiccups, and it's just not going well. I mean, last year, for example, the Jets, Greg Zuerlein was an outstanding kicker for them the year before. He was beyond awful last year. If you're a playoff team and your kicker is struggling like that, you are going to the streets to find somebody. And I just wonder if that's going to eventually result in week 11, 12, 13 of the year if somebody does call Justin Tucker once this suspension comes to an end. Is he one of the greatest kickers of all time? Yes. Is he also coming off a season in which he struggled a lot? That is also true. He missed 8 kicks. He was 73% of the year, his worst of his career by far. So there's a lot to balance of here. Maybe he gets a workout somewhere around the NFL, but there's also the chance that this is a PR thing that no NFL team will take upon themselves because it is not a premium position per se. It's a kicker. And NFL great Bill Parcells years ago said, when it comes to my kicker, my punter, my long snapper, I don't want any distractions at all from them. And if there is, they're gone. So there are a few Bill Parcells disciples around the NFL who I guarantee you will not even touch Justin Tucker this year. So I'm not ready to say Justin Tucker is done in the NFL, but this is definitely a big hill to climb for him after the suspension.
All right. All right. Let's move on to some positive news. Going down to Tampa to talk about the extensions that the Buccaneers have doled out to their head coach, Todd Bowles, and to their GM, Jason Licht. Multi year extensions. I don't have the details. Maybe you have the details. A lot of that stuff often stays cloudy, but it looks like they're going to be there for the long term. Todd Bowles was given a tough task taking that team after Tom Brady, after Bruce Arians, after a Super Bowl, not long after, basically saying, we need you to take this team into the new era of Tampa Bay football. They've done so. They've gone out. They've won the NFC South in 3 straight years. Jason Licht, if you've listened to any of our Spotlight interviews recently, has become one of the most revered people in the executive level. He's got a lot of guys around the league that have worked with him and now are moving up the ranks. It's a great guy to listen to, be spoken about from some of our Spotlight guests, the John Spytex of the world. It's been good for the Buccaneers last couple of years. I can't imagine that they really had any thought other than we're going to go ahead and extend these guys. Are any way surprised that the Glazer family decided to commit to these two for the long term?
No, it doesn't come as a major surprise. I think the Todd Bowles one is more interesting just because, you mentioned it. The entire transition from Bruce Arians to Todd was a very weird one. It happened way after the coaching cycle was over, after the owners' meetings was over in late March. Bruce just announced through Peter King that he was leaving and giving it to Todd Bowles. It was a crazy thing that happened. And Todd did get a year with Tom Brady. That was the year they went 8-9 and lost in the wild card round to the Dallas Cowboys. But they won the division with that 8-9 record. And ever since, they've continued to win the division. 9 wins the year before this past season, 10 wins this year. And of course, there's been that successful transition to Baker Mayfield, but also you got to give credit to Todd Bowles for also identifying offensive coordinators to work with Baker Mayfield and the entire offense. Last 2 years ago, Dave Canales goes on to become the Panthers head coach. Last year, Liam Cohn goes on to become the Jaguars head coach, and now he hires from within with Josh Grizzer to take over as the offensive coordinator. But that is one of the difficulties whenever you have a defensive-minded head coach, where if your offense does well, other NFL teams are attacking and taking your offensive coordinator to become a head coach, and you got to reset. And that's why, for what it's worth, at least around league circles and agents of other coaches, they've always wondered if Todd would survive because are the owners going to be sick and tired of it? There was a point years ago when the Buccaneers had Lovie Smith. They all of a sudden just fired him because their offensive coordinator at the time was Dirk Cutter, and he was about to get hired somewhere else. They were like, no, we don't want to lose Dirk, so we're going to fire Lovie and elevate Dirk to head coach. So that thought process has definitely been in the minds of some people around the NFL. But clearly, the Glazer family was no, no, no. We are sticking with Todd Bowles, and they give him an extension for 3 years, being there for 3 years, winning three NFC South titles, and now he'll be there for the foreseeable future. I do want to talk about Jason Light for a second because he has been there for now over a decade, and he has really become one of the more accomplished GMs in the NFL. And I remember speaking to Jason. It was a couple years after winning the Super Bowl with Tom Brady, and I asked him a question about, you know, you look at your tenure as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I mean, as general manager of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you ever reflect on the fact that you guys started off, poorly and didn't have much success, and you hired three different head coaches, which is unheard of for a GM in today's NFL? With no success. Like, he was there with Lovey Smith. He didn't really hire Lovey, but he was there with Lovey. Then he was there with Dirk Cutter, and then he was there for Bruce Arians, and there really was no success to that point. And he always told me, I think about that all the time because that is very, very rare in the NFL. And the Bucks are very glad they held on to Jason Light because the drafting that he and his team have done over the years. When Tom Brady went there in 2020, it wasn't because Tom Brady just wanted to go to the Florida Sun. It was because that was an organization that had drafted so well over the years that most of the roster was prepared for Tom Brady to walk in and take them over the hump. You look at the drafting they've done, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, the offensive line over the years has literally been revamped twice. I mean, there were the years where they had Ali Marpet and Alex Kappa, and they signed Ryan Jensen, and they had Donovan Smith. Then eventually he literally redid the entire offensive line, which is so hard for so many teams around the NFL to do that, with the Tristan Wirfs, the Luke Gedekes, the Graham Bardens, the Cody Mock, the signing of the Brett Bredesen as a free agent has become a consistent player for them. That is hard to do in the NFL, and the Bucks have succeeded twice with building that offensive line. You look at some of the other players that are drafted: Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield, Bucky Irving, Kalijah Kancey, Kate Otten, and on and on. There are so many great players that this team has drafted: Zion McCullum, Yaya Diaby. Some of these players are not, names that are household names around the NFL, but Jason Light, his staff, when John Spytek was there, and the rest of the people throughout that front office, Ron McCartney, Mike Greenberg, and plenty of other people there who deserve more recognition. That all falls for Jason Light, who has done an outstanding job with all the players that they have there. They have some great behind the scenes videos over the years that they've done on their digital team, their YouTube channel, just talking about their draft process and how they've changed it. And when John Spytek was on this show a few weeks ago, he mentioned that the player, like, we were able to identify the talent. The thing we were missing was the person. And they basically changed their entire draft model and thought process to, we want to find players who are like Levante David, who was the first ever guest here on NFL Spotlight. We want to find those type of people. And whenever they started focusing on the person, not only the talent, their draft success has been through the roof ever since. And this is a very, very well deserved extension for Jason Light.
All right, Ari, we got one more thing we got to talk about, which it would not be a week of NFL Spotlight if Aaron Rodgers' name was not dropped at least one time. This time, though, it seems like we might be gearing up for a timeline of how many times we will speak about him for the foreseeable future, as he has confirmed that this upcoming season will likely be his final in the NFL. We're going with likely. I'll see it when I believe it. Nonetheless, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL all time. He's seemingly setting up a farewell tour this upcoming season. We don't need to get into all the ins and outs of what his greatness is, this, that, and the other. We know who Aaron Rodgers is, and we'll have plenty of time to discuss that. What do you imagine that this farewell tour, in a season that seemingly he's got a little bit of pressure to finish on a high note with the Pittsburgh Steelers, looking like his one and only year there, what do you imagine the season's going to look like for him?
I think for him personally, putting the Steelers to the side for a second, it's really just ending on a good note. I think those 2 years with the Jets were just so bad and so sour. Obviously, the first year was not necessarily under his control with the torn Achilles after just 4 plays, but winning just 5 games last year, it's embarrassing, right? I mean, you end up there, you're viewed as the savior, and you're going to get us to the playoffs for the first time in over a decade and all that. And it's a complete flop and it doesn't work at all. And the coach is is getting fired, and the offensive coordinator you brought in is getting put to the side, and the GM is getting fired. You're trading for a receiver you love, but it's not helping the team. It was a mess, right? And I don't think he wanted to go out like that in the NFL. And I know he mentioned he had some personal stuff this offseason, but I think in the back of his mind, he always wanted to play this year, and he's going to a better situation this year. There is no doubt about that. The Steelers are a team that, regardless of the quarterback, keep on winning 9, 10 games every single year. The issue, of course, has been winning in the playoffs, which the Steelers are hoping will change now. But you're going to be in a more model franchise, a consistent place, a really good head coach in Mike Tomlin, somebody who has the attention of all the players there and the respect of all the players there. And we've mentioned it before, Ben. Like, there are so many great, talented players on this team who are in a win now mode, from the TJ Watts to the Cameron Haywards to the Minka Fitzpatricks and all those different players on that team. The offensive side as well, of course, trading for a player like a DK Metcalf. There are so many players on this team where it's about the right now. It's about winning in 2025. So for Aaron, obviously the Steelers have high hopes and winning the playoff games and maybe making the Super Bowl. But if he's able to just string together a good year and make the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game, I think he'd be fine going into the sunset like that. And like he said on McAfee, I'll believe it when I see it. But he said he'll become a private citizen and no one will ever hear about him again. We'll see about that. But I see you laughing there, Ben. But yeah, it's gonna be
There's zero
it's
chance this guy becomes a private citizen. He loves the attention. He loves the
yeah.
attention. He doesn't need the money to go on McAfee. He does it because he wants to, because he's bored.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into his personal life here before we all get attacked, also. Um, but listen, this is why the Steelers brought him in. They really want to get some more success over here once we get to January football, and if that's going to happen here, I think that's going to be satisfying to everyone, and we'll see what ends up happening. I just thought it was funny, though. I will be. It was funny that he answered the question like, "Yeah, it's probably my final year." He knew what he was doing there. He's going to get his. I think. I think he's gonna get a farewell tour. We'll see what happens week 1 versus the Jets. Week 8 versus the Packers. I'll imagine those Packers fans are going to travel to Pittsburgh, even though it's hard. Steelers fans pack the stadium regardless, but Packers fans travel well too, and we'll see how that all goes. But this could be it for him, and if it is, I mean, me and you know, Ben, regardless of our opinions on all these different things about him and whatever, it's one of the greatest quarterback careers we've had in the NFL, and that's for
Without
sure
a
true.
doubt. And I think that's why it has to be put in perspective of, regardless of how you feel about him, the decisions he makes on and off the field, some of the silliness that comes along with the commitment stuff with an Aaron Rodgers, you are truly talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever grace the field. And the way that he played for long, 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 long time, I think is what a lot of people are hoping to see for one more final year here with Pittsburgh, regardless if I have a Ravens helmet over my shoulder or not. I do think it is great to see great players go out on top, to a certain degree. I don't want him to win the AFC North, but I want him to go out there and at least look a little bit like the Aaron Rodgers and that we knew and loved for the Packers for years.
I think that's all he wants to. I think just you can't tell me. I know he'll tell you, I don't read everything. I don't listen to the media, whatever. The narratives are out there. He saw it. It was embarrassing. 2 years with the Jets, talking about Lombardi's and all the excitement, and that's what we got. I don't think it made sense for him to walk out like that. He wants to walk out on a better note, and that's what he's going to try to do over here in Pittsburgh in 2025. All right, that will do it here for our Friday, June 27 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here on Monday morning, once again, talking more NFL, revealing who will be our next Spotlight guest on Tuesday. We had AJ Stevens of Athletes First this week, a really great conversation with him. Cardinals GM Monty Ford before that. We've had Raiders GM John Spytek about a month ago. If you've missed any of those, go check it out. And we will see all of you here on Monday morning.